that's going to be the end of an era there, losing those big smokestacks.
I hate to see it go. It's a part of my life.
It looked like a popsicle falling, and then smoke all came, and then boom.
With a flip of a switch, a big bang, and the collapse of landmarks. The two Murray stacks come tumbling down, but while some aspects went well today, others not so well.
Good evening. Two giants of the Salt Lake skyline fell today in a cloud of dust, as you saw there.
After years of argument and preparation, the Murray smokestacks were imploded at their bases and fell into a trench this morning. Now, 2 News' Rod Decker is overlooking the old smelter site now, and Rod, we saw them fall. Did the blast go the way officials had hoped?
Well, it was not a perfect blast, as you said. It didn't go exactly as planned, but it was good enough to get the job done. Demolition experts blew out the north sides of the bottoms of the two smokestacks, hoping the big chimneys would fall like trees, laying out their full length in the trenches that had been dug for them. But the stacks were made of 20 million pounds of bricks, unreinforced by any steel rods, a kind of construction that's no longer allowed. Both chimneys telescoped. That is, instead of staying together as they fell, they crumbled and fell apart, so the tops fell down on the rubble of the lower parts. As you can see here, in the case of both stacks, the rubble piled up in the first part of the trenches, before the whole scene was covered by dust. The dust cloud blew over this Murray neighborhood, and it was lower than the officials had expected. Crews rigged up an elaborate sprinkler system to control dust, but dust is inevitable from explosives and the thump of so much falling brick. Officials had expected the dust to rise higher and disperse instead of staying so low to the ground. Spectators liked the show.
It was kind of cool, but kind of sad.
I was amazed at the incredible engineering that went on.
But people hated to lose the landmarks.
I've looked at those chimney stacks every morning for my whole life. Now that I live in Sandy, I look out my bedroom window and see the chimney stacks, and I know where I'm from and where I was born, and it's never going to be the same. The scenic view of the valley is never going to be the same.
Now you can see behind me here that pile of rubble. That's where the big stack telescoped. And so they've got that pile there. They're probably going to have to move around by a bulldozer. Some trouble, but not much harm. They've got back the asbestos reports. They say they have not found a single shred of asbestos anywhere in the atmosphere. That's good news. Back to studio.
All right, Rod, a bunch of people were told they had to get out of their homes. Are they back yet?
No, they hope to have them back by 3. They now say they'll have them back by 7.
Okay, Rod Decker reporting live from Murray, site of today's demolition.
The collapse of the Murray stacks isn't just getting attention from spectators. As Rod mentioned, dust from the explosions carried further than expected. Now the EPA is concerned toxic substances could be inhaled by nearby residents. 2 News reporter Andrew Stack is at the demolition site. And Andrew, has the EPA determined this dust is dangerous?
Well, Leanne, EPA experts have been out here testing air quality all day long, and so far they have determined, as Rod said, there is no asbestos in the air. And the reason they've determined that is because of bricks like this one. If you look closely, you can see there's a chunk of asbestos here on the corner, and they say that the whole pile of bricks looks just like that, but they say there are 2 other toxic compounds that could have been released in the blast, and we may be breathing them right now. This explosion of the Hotel Newhouse in 1982 kicked up so much dust, few knew what hit them when the gigantic cloud turned day into night.
It seemed like it was just a wall.
Today's explosion of the Murray smokestacks paled by comparison, but contained in this dust is something no one would ever want to breathe.
Right away, my reaction was to run and get in my truck and roll up the windows, which I did.
Inside the stacks, there is lead oxide and arsenic oxide. And they're in there as oxides because they were burned when they were in the smelter. Both of them are very bad for the human body.
Thomas Breitling spent most of his life overseeing smelters like the Murray stacks. He's also been in charge of dust control. Friday, he tried in vain to convince a federal judge to prevent this explosion.
The judge said if this had been If you had been able to bring this to me a week ago, there would have been a different answer.
But explosives experts testified the dust would not go any further than 1,000 feet. This morning, it did.
The two chimneys would act like a cannon, and they did. The speed of something that has been exploded is so fast and has so much energy, a little spray of water is not going to do anything to it.
And Breitling was right. Despite numerous hoses spraying the dust, not only did it overrun the hoses, the water had little more effect than to cut slices through the gigantic cloud.
He said, it's surrounding us so bad right now, I've only got 1 block visibility. And he said they told me it wouldn't get this far.
Now, as far as arsenic and lead in the air is concerned, the EPA is still testing. They'll have the results of those tests later tonight, about 7 p.m., 2 hours from now, and we'll have those for you then.
Well, Andrew, when they get the results back, do they expect to find anything?
Well, the one thing that they did know is the fact that there was a lot more arsenic inside these stacks than lead. So primarily they're testing for arsenic. If they find arsenic, they will look for lead after that. But right now, actually, everybody down here doesn't expect to actually find any, although the results aren't in yet, so we'll see.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. The EPA plans to continue testing air quality around the Salt Lake Valley in the days and...
The ground shakes and a Murray landmark falls. Rubble, that is all that's left where the Murray smokestacks once stood. Years of controversy came to an abrupt ending this morning as the stacks came crashing down. We have team coverage of the end of a landmark, beginning with our News 4 Utah's Sean Conroy. Sean?
Well, Barb, they were landmarks 98 years in the making, and as you can see behind me now, they're just reduced to a pile of rubble. The small stack built in 1902, the taller one in 1918, which stood as landmarks for almost a century, demolished in 10 simple seconds.
With a flash, a boom, some screams and applause, landmarks that stood tall for all the Salt Lake Valley to see vanished in a cloud of dust.
It seems so simple. I mean, 1 minute they're there, and the next minute they're leaning and they're gone.
The blasts were 3 seconds apart. First the tall stack, then the smaller went racing towards the ground. Not like a tree like most picture. It didn't look right to the untrained eye. It wasn't a surprise to engineers.
The tall one, you saw it collapse on itself, but lean out to the north. The small one was already failing, so you saw it sort of telescope on itself.
People spent the night hoping to secure the best view, but near, far, east, west, north, south. No matter where you watched it from, the ending was the same, even though the reactions were quite different.
You could feel the ground shake.
I thought it was pretty cool. Definitely worthwhile getting up and coming out and see.
While some were impressed with the spectacle, others were depressed with the results.
That was all the history of Murray. It was just blowing up in those few seconds. Yeah. It's very sad.
I feel like that they did it for no reason. Really heartbroken.
In fact, most were sad to see them go, not only because of the history lost, but concerns they themselves would get lost.
Now I'll never find my way home again.
You happy they came down?
Not really.
Why?
Because a couple times my mom would say, if you ever get lost, you can just find the smokestacks and your grandma's house will be right there.
Dalton Parker will have to find another way to Grandma's house, as Murray will have to find another identity to cling to.
Good to see Murray's heritage going down in one big boom, huh?
Now the bricks and debris will stay on the site for at least 6 months until they identify how much asbestos, arsenic, and lead is in there. If there's not a lot, they will bury it here to make way for that development. But right now, Barb, the real focus is on tracking that dust cloud that went boom all across Murray.
Thank you, Sean.
You bet.